This value charts indicator was downloaded from Futures.io. All right, so it's a very public source there. So the intent of the question here is, how can we move a stop loss to basically something like break even? How can we trigger a stop loss to be moved to whatever you want it to go? But so in this example, we'll move our stop loss to break even when this value chart indicator crosses the 0 line. So here's an example of the low of the bar from this indicator, penetrating the 0 line, right? And then more importantly, during price change, not waiting for the bar to close. All right, so there's two parts to this question here, right? So we want the stop loss, or we want this indicator to be monitored in real time, and then also we want the indicator to be used as a trigger to move the stop loss, something like that. All right, there we go. So there's a line marking the 0 line, right? So we want to know when this indicator crosses that 0 line. And so this indicator, it's an oscillator going from a positive value to a negative value. Very basically like a MACD, kind of a MACD type of oscillator, but it draws bars, instead of a plot line. It draws bars instead. So, all right, so we'll take a look at this indicator in Bloodhound and see what we can do. Let me get BlackBird up and running. There we go. So let's get BlackBird up on the chart. And always remember, with strategies, you have to hit the enable option, under setup. All right, so under NinjaTrader setup, you need to hit the enable option. But also what's going to be critical is, going back to this, since Gregory wants to monitor this indicator in real time, then we need to change, NinjaTrader requires that you change the calculate mode here, right? So we have to change the calculate mode to something on price change, like that. So there you go. So that's the first thing we need to do to accomplish this goal, is change BlackBird's calculate mode. So now we can click OK, and we'll let BlackBird load up here. And let's open up the order settings window down here, and let's just create a simple order here. All right, and so the focus is on the stop loss. So let's just make a stop loss, and let's see, I'll just to exaggerate, the illustration here, I'll set it way out to like a 30 tick stop loss to start with. All right, and then the next part is to go into the trailing actions tab, right? So the main point of this question is to set up a trailing rule to move our stop loss to break even, when this indicator crosses the 0 line. So we're going to the trailing actions, set the mode to custom, and now we can start creating a custom trailing rule here. So we're going to add a trailing rule. All right, so we want to break even when the value chart crosses over the 0 line, something like that. All right, so let's see here. Before we get into the triggers, let's just tackle the action here quickly. So to move a stop loss to break even, right, the action is we're going to move the stop loss to the entry price, right? Break even is basically the entry price. So, all right, so there's the action to move the stop loss to break even. So now the real key to this question is in the trigger here. So which one of these triggers do we use to identify when this value chart, right, is crossing that 0 line? And so the trigger we want is price versus indicator here. So so we're not actually monitoring price, we're actually monitoring a indicator value versus a threshold value. Actually, sorry, it's not price versus indicator. We want indicator value. There we go. Indicator value is what we want there. And so let's go into the indicator here. And let's replace the ATR. Let's go find this Sim22 indicator here. There we go. So there's our value charts. Let's add it there. And let's see, I think I'm going to have to close out of this here. And oh, there we go. Let's see. All right. I adjust my value chart settings to a period of 14. So that's what I needed here, this 14 value. So for some reason, this indicator wasn't working with its default period setting. So I just increased it, and then the indicator started working. So, all right. So let's go back into our trigger and open this up. Go back into Sim22. Add the value chart down there, and number of bars, that's what I changed. I just changed that to 14. And so, oh, look at that. All right, perfect. Apparently, this Sim22 programmer guy put quite a bit of thought into this indicator, and he exposed the high price of these bars and the low price of these bars, along with the open. So we actually have all 4 prices of these indicator bars here, right? Obviously not price bars, but indicator bars here. So if we're in a long trade, well, actually, let's see here. So yeah, this screenshot here is an example of a short trade. So on a short trade, if the low goes below the 0 line, all right, if the low goes below the 0 line. All right, so on a short trade, let's get back in here. And there might be a quirk with this indicator because it's not BlackBird's not remembering it for some reason. Yeah, well, we'll see what happens here. Okay, so on a short trade, we're going to monitor the low price. And so if it's a long trade, then it would be the opposite, all right, opposite side of the bar. So that would be the high price of the bar, or the high value, I should say, the high value of the bar. Yeah, these aren't price bars. These are indicator values. So the low value versus the high value. And there we go. And there we go. Okay, now it's remembered it. There we go. Click off on that. And so next, we just need to figure out, all right, so if we're in a short trade here, what value are we looking for? And yeah, we're looking for the low value of the bar to be less than 0, or actually probably less than or equal to 0, right? And so then if it is a long trade, we're looking for the high of the bar to be greater than or equal to 0 as well to move it, right? So yeah, so keep in mind here, let's open up the indicator again, right? So for a long trade, we're using the high value of this indicator, right? So as we go back, so if the high value, so for a long trade here, right, if the high value is greater than or equal to 0, that will be the trigger mechanism there. And that's it. Yeah, it's basically that simple there. So that's our trigger requirement. And again, remember, we had to set BlackBird to run on price change, right? So in order to evaluate an indicator in real time, you had to change the calculate mode of what NinjaTrader calls the hosting. Well, this is a hosting strategy. It's not a hosting indicator, but the host, right? So your host, whether the host is an indicator or a strategy, the host, its calculate mode has to be set accordingly to how you want to monitor the guest indicators, right? So in this case, BlackBird being the host, it has to have its calculate set to on price change. Actually, let me just double check again here. Make sure I didn't forget anything in my haste. So we got the trigger, we got the action to move to break even, and there's no repeat. Yeah. So yeah, when you move a stop loss to break even, right? That's a one-time action. So there's no repeating this trailing rule. So all right, I think we got everything we need. So let's give this a test run here. So all right, so our value chart is above the 0. So let's see. Let's take a. Oh, you know what? Yeah. All right, we're gonna have to pause for a moment and change our data feed. So let's turn BlackBird off for a moment and switch our data feed over to simulated. There we go. All right, and then we'll enable BlackBird again. All right, and let's just double check our order settings, and yeah, everything's good. All right, cool. All right, let's go short. Yeah, let's lock the scaling there. And there we go. Just moved to break even right as the indicator touched 0 and our stop loss moved. Right. So there we go. All right. So let's open this all up so we can take a look at what we did. All right. So again, the trigger that we used was an indicator value. Right, we were looking to see when the high value or the low value of this indicator's bar was, above or below 0. Right, so there's our threshold levels. That we're looking for is the 0 value, and then if we open up the indicator again, right there we go. Man, yeah, it looks like there's some kind of weird quirk going on here. So. The number of bars had changed back to 5 again, so let's put that back on 14. There we go. All right, so let me take a look at the Q&A window here and see if there's any follow-up questions here. Let's see, 14 bars, yeah. Yeah, just a little side note here on the indicator being forgotten. Yeah, what I was doing is when the value chart was being dropped and the trigger was going back to the ATR indicator, it was because I was just clicking right off. So if you get out of this menu in the correct order, and we'll have to see if there's a way to address this, but if you notice, right, these menus all pop out. They're all basically all kind of like linked together, right? Linking together, popping out of one menu, popping out of another here. So if you back out of them in the correct order, right? So this indicator selection window, if I go back to, go back to this menu here, if I click on it, right, it closes the menu selection or the indicator selection window. It goes back to this, and then to get out of this window, I then click on the next menu back, and then everything is remembered accordingly. So, but if the problem that I was having is when I had when I had these two menus open here, I was just clicking right off, out of it, and so apparently that was causing the indicator to not be remembered there. So just keep in mind when you've got multiple menus popped open here to this, close them out, in sequence like this, like that, and then everything will be just fine.